The thing that I found really interesting about this drug is that it produces what I think is probably the most stereotyped trip, if you want to call it, or the psychological phenomenon that happens alongside the drug effects. And so people will describe this earlier life autobiographical replaying of emotionally salient memories that are kind of epoched in time. And so,
some people would got life review, right?
Life review or slideshow. Yeah, exactly. And so, it's interesting. Everybody's kind of got a different version of what the slideshow ends up playing out to be like for them. And so some people would say, I found myself in this room and it was like my TV from childhood and all of a sudden it was playing all these things, or I found myself in a hall of mirrors and it was playing all these things. So like the context can be very different, but the action, the mind seems to shape that, but the actual replay seems to be pretty stereotyped.
Stereotype meaning like this, it's a pattern that repeats, or it's just like a common characteristic.
It's a common characteristic, and it's, closed eye only. It's not open eyes. It's not, for a lot of people, the Ibogaine experience is kind of really around this part, this kind of replay part that happens. And from what I have heard, there's kind of a cathartic reevaluation of these memories, and interestingly, an ability to not only have insights into your own reasons, which may have been good or bad for feeling or behaving or doing whatever it was, but also they have some insight into the reasons for the other, which to me is like the hardest thing to explain. It's almost like you knew it the whole time.
Say it one more time. Say the last part again.
So when people have this slideshow or life review, they seem to have it as a third party person in the experience. Like, what is this, Christmas Carol, Scrooge or whatever, when they go back in life and you see like
you become the observer of your own past experience,
right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Like Scrooge goes back and sees himself as a kid. He sees himself as like when he broke up with his significant, all that stuff. It's almost like that. Like you're having a similar sort of thing. I've used the analogy of Tom Cruise in the Minority Report, right? Where you're able to go back and see these events. And what's so fascinating, and why I've said, and I'll continue to say, I think this is the most sophisticated drug on the planet, is that I think that there's nothing else that can seem to do this, right? Where you have these experiences where you're able to hold this neutral place, and you're able to have this sense of where you were and why you did what you did, and you have this sense of the other, and you're able to, intuit, empathize. I don't know what that is. You somehow, stored it at the time, and you weren't able to fully access it, and you're able to access it, whatever that is. Being able to forgive or to forget or to understand this person's position as well as your own, and then seemingly like unlock the lock on both sides and then kind of dissolve the problem. People say they kind of would work through all of this. And, there's one veteran, would say, I went through all this military stuff and at the back of the room, it was my early childhood trauma, And so this idea that at the core of it, for a lot of this ends up being a childhood trauma thing that's kind of buried below all of it, and really being able to actually both access that in a way that you can understand that in many cases the traumatizer was themselves traumatized, and that it's a pattern of trauma, and the ability to kind of resolve it by understanding at this kind of, more meta empathic viewpoint. And so that's where I think the tool is really going to be important, is this ability to have what seems to be a pretty profound neurotrophic effect. We were able to see disability improvements from traumatic brain injury, but also this pretty pronounced kind of cathartic re-evaluation, reconsolidation of past life, problematic memories.